Hey friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon like thumbs up, share up right arrow, and subscribe red heart.
What happens back one of Hollywood's most admired actors sits bottomward for what should be a accepted account alone to face a battery of adverse questions and thinly buried accusations that advance him to his breaking point. Today, we're diving into the atomic confrontation that had anybody talking, where professional abode went out the window and tensions able a boiling point that Cypher saw coming. Accomplish sure to hit that subscribe button and bead a comment beneath because this adventure has more twists than you ability expect. The morning started like any added at the View Studios in New York. Johnny Depp had a customed Aboriginal for his scheduled appearance, announcement his latest independent Blur project. The makeup artist bashed about him, applying the finishing touches as he advised his talking credibility with his publicist. Everything seemed routine, professional, exactly what you'd apprehend for a veteran actor authoritative the media round. "Johnny, you attending great," his publicist whispered, adjusting his anorak collar. "Remember, accumulate it light. Focus on the film and don't let them allurement you into anything controversial." Depp nodded, his signature rings communicable the studio lights as he gestured. "I've done this dance 1,000 times. It'll be fine." But as he was escorted to the iconic View set, article acquainted different. The usual balmy pre-in babble from the production agents was conspicuously absent. Instead, there were hushed whispers and darting glances. The activity in the room had an bend to it that Depp couldn't quite place. Whoopi Goldberg was already built in at the table, shuffling through her addendum with an acuteness that seemed abnormal for what was declared to be a promotional interview. Joy Behar sat to her right, bore her pen against her coffee mug in a rhythmic pattern that appropriate a frayed energy. Sarah Haynes was reviewing article on her tablet, her countenance channeled in concentration, while Alyssa Fenhold and Tsunami host aside agilely between themselves. "Good morning, Johnny," Whoopi alleged out as he approached the guest chair. Her accent was cordial enough, but there was article in her eyes that didn't bout the pleasantries. "Ready to allocution about your new project?" "Absolutely," Depp replied, settling into his bench and adjusting his microphone. "Thanks for accepting me on the show." The admission began, and within seconds, the accustomed appearance affair music filled the studio. The cameras rolled, the admirers applauded, and Whoopi launched into her audition with the polished professionalism that had made her a daytime television icon. "We're here with Johnny Depp talking about his new film. But Johnny, afore we get to that, I anticipate we charge to abode the elephant in the room," she said, her tone shifting acutely from the warm introduction. "Your contempo acknowledged battles have been appealing public, and a lot of people are apprehensive if you've learned anything from those experiences." Depp's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the direction he'd been told the interview would take. "Well, Whoopi, I'd adopt to focus on the work, on the creative process abaft this film. That's why I'm here today. But you can't aloof ignore the past, can you?" Joy interjected, leaning advanced with that aciculate wit that had become her trademark. "I mean, when someone's been through what you've been through, don't you anticipate the public deserves some accountability?" The tension in the allowance was apparent now. The audience, which had been warmly receptive moments before, seemed to sense the about-face in energy. Depp straightened in his chair, his jaw tightening about imperceptibly. "I'm not sure what you're allurement me to be accountable for," he said, his voice maintaining its abstinent accent despite the accessible provocation. "I've been through a absolute accessible acknowledged action that vindicated me on assorted fronts. I'm here to allocution about my art, about storytelling, about the ability that I've dedicated my activity to." Sarah Haynes jumped in, her articulation accustomed a false sweetness that almost accumulation the underlying accusation. "But Johnny, don't you anticipate that accessible abstracts face these kinds of allegations, alike if they're accurately vindicated, they accept a responsibility to abode the broader cultural chat to appearance growth? What advance are you accurately looking for?" Depp asked, his backbone beginning to abrasion thin. "I've been acting professionally for over 3 decades. I've formed with endless people, created characters that brought joy to millions. That's the chat I thought we were actuality to have." Tsunami host, with her accomplishments as a prosecutor, couldn't abide abacus her legal angle to the mix. As someone who's formed in the acknowledged system, I know that attorneys' victories don't always tell the able story. Sometimes there are settlements, NDAs, things that keep the abounding accuracy from advancing out. Are you suggesting that I've somehow bought my way out of accountability? Depp asked, his articulation bottomward to a lower register that anyone accustomed with his assignment would recognize as a admonishing sign. Because if that's what you're implying, I anticipate we need to be absolute bright about what we're discussing here. Whoopi aloft her hand as if to abstinent the conversation, but her abutting words alone added ammunition to the fire. Johnny, I anticipate what we're all trying to accept is how addition goes from actuality America's sweetheart playing beloved characters like Captain Jack Sparrow to actuality complex in such messy public disputes. What changed? What changed? Depp said, his articulation now carrying an bend that cut through the studio air. Is that I begin myself in a situation area cogent the accuracy became more important than attention a carefully crafted accessible image. I chose honesty over convenience. And apparently that's fabricated some bodies uncomfortable. Alyssa Fenhold, who had been relatively quiet up to this point, absently to add her articulation to the chorus. But Johnny, when we attending at the arrangement of behavior, the actuality corruption issues that came out during your acknowledged proceedings, don't you think admirers deserve to apperceive that you're addressing these problems seriously? The color drained from Depp's face. The question hit him like a concrete blow, and for a moment, the acclimatized actor's composure absurd completely. His hands, which had been comatose calmly on the armrests of his chair, now absorbed them with white-knuckled intensity. Pattern of behavior, he afresh slowly, as if tasting the words and award them bitter. You apperceive what, ladies? I came here in acceptable acceptance to allocution about a project that I'm amorous about. A small absolute blur that tells an important story. Instead, I'm sitting here actuality subjected to what feels like a accommodating advance on my appearance and my reputation. The flat fell silent except for the hum of the cameras and the almost oral whispers from the production crew. Alike the audience seemed to ascendancy its aggregate breath, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Joy Behar, never one to a back bottomward from confrontation, columnist forward. It's not an attack, Johnny. It's journalism. It's asking the adamantine questions that our viewers' appetite answered. Journalism. Deb laughed. But there was no amusement in it. Is that what we're calling this? Because from area I'm sitting, it feels more like a accessible beheading bearded as daytime television. Whoopi's expression hardened. Johnny, I think your actuality a little dramatic. We're asking accepted questions about legitimate concerns. If you can't handle that akin of scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be in the accessible eye. That was the moment aggregate changed. The mask of able abode that had been holding this alternation together finally slipped completely. Depp's eyes flashed with article dangerous, something that fabricated it bright that Whoopi Goldberg had aloof beyond a band that couldn't be uncrossed. Maybe I shouldn't be in the accessible eye, he repeated. His voice now accustomed the abounding weight of decades of Hollywood politics, personal betrayals, and accessible humiliations. That's an absorbing angle from someone who's congenital their absolute career on actuality in the accessible eye. The other panelists exchanged glances, suddenly realizing that their coordinated approachability except pushed things too far. But Whoopi, conceivably activity the need to advance her ascendancy as the show's moderator, angled down. The difference is, Johnny, I've never had to explain abroad the affectionate of behavior that you've had to explain away. I've never put bodies in positions area they felt unsafe or uncomfortable. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun that had aloof been fired. Anybody in the studio, from the camera's operators to the admirers' members, accepted that they had aloof witnessed something extraordinary. Johnny Depp sat perfectly still for what acquainted like an eternity. His eyes bound on Whoopi's face with an intensity that fabricated everyone uncomfortable. The blackout connected on for what acquainted like minutes, but was probably alone seconds. Johnny Depp's eyes never labored Whoopi's face, and when he assuredly spoke, his articulation was so quiet that the audio technicians had to strain to aces it up through the microphones. You apperceive what, Whoopi, he said, each word abstinent and deliberate. I've spent the aftermost few years accepting my life dissected by bodies who weren't there, who don't apperceive the truth, and who seem to booty amusement in watching someone's world bake bottomward about them. But I never expected to sit beyond from addition I once admired and apprehend them echo the same lies that about destroyed everything I've formed for. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her chair, perhaps alpha to apprehend that her approach had backfired spectacularly. Johnny, I'm not repeating lies. I'm asking about accurate behaviors that came out in cloister proceedings. Documented by whom? Depp advanced back, his voice a scent for the aboriginal time since the account began. By bodies who had every banking allurement to acrylic me in the affliction accessible ablaze by tabloid journalists who congenital their careers on sensationalism. You're sitting there acting like you're some affectionate of moral authority, but you're aloof repeating gossip and calling it journalism. Sarah Haynes approved to interject, her voice taking on an arrogant accent that only made things worse. Johnny, I anticipate we're all aggravating to accept a productive conversation actuality about accountability and advance in the entertainment industry. Depp angry to face her with such acuteness that she actually flinched. Productive conversation? Sarah, let me ask you something. When was the aftermost time you sat beyond from a guest and systematically approved to tear down aggregate they've able in their career? Aback was the aftermost time you ambushed addition who came actuality in good faith. We're not ambushing anyone, Joy. Beho protested, but her voice lacked its accepted conviction. We're doing our job as interviewers. Your job, Depp repeated, continuing up from his armchair so abruptly that his microphone pack clattered to the floor. Your job is to interview me about my film, about my craft, about the things that actually matter to the bodies who ability appetite to see this movie. Instead, you've turned this into some affectionate of kangaroo court where you've already absentatively I'm guilty of crimes I was never bedeviled of. The audience was absolutely bashful now, watching this aberrant breakdown of professional breeding with an admixture of fascination and horror. Some captivated up their phones, recording what they sensed was a moment that would be talked about for years to come. Tsunami host, perhaps feeling emboldened by her legal background, fabricated the aberration of trying to achieve ascendancy of the narrative. Johnny, the cloister of accessible assessment is different from a cloister of law. Just because you weren't bedeviled doesn't mean bodies don't accept legitimate concerns about your behavior. Depp whirled about to face her eyes blazing. The cloister of accessible opinion. Are you listening to yourself? You're literally saying that facts don't matter, that evidence doesn't matter, that due process doesn't matter. You're saying that mob mentality should override the legal arrangement that this country was built on. That's not what I'm saying. Sonny backpedaled, but Depp wasn't finished. That's absolutely what you're saying. Your adage that alike admitting I proved my chastity in court, alike admitting the truth came out, you still anticipate I should be advised like a recusable man because it makes bigger television. Do you accept any idea what that affectionate of cerebration does to people? Do you accept any abstraction of the damage you account back you perpetuate lies for the account of ratings? Whoopi tried to acknowledge her ascendancy as the show's moderator, but her articulation wavered slightly. Johnny, I anticipate you charge to calm down. We're accepting a discussion here. Calm down. Depp laughed. And this time there was 18-carat atheism in his voice. Whoopi, you aloof accused me of making bodies feel unsafe. You sat there and adumbrated that I'm some affectionate of predator who's able justice. You did that on civic television in advance of millions of people, and now you appetite me to calm down. I never said you were a predator, Whoopi protested. But her words articulate alveolate alike to her own ears. You didn't accept to say it explicitly. That's the admirable thing about what you do here, isn't it? You can abort someone's acceptability with implications and innuendo. And afresh when they alarm you out on it, you can claim you never absolutely said anything directly. Depp's articulation was assent now. The accurate ascendancy he'd maintained throughout his career, assuredly giving way to raw emotion. Alyssa Fenhold made one aftermost advance to deliver the interview. Johnny, maybe we got off on the amiss foot. Why don't we alpha over and allocution about your film? Deb angry to look at her with article approaching pity. Alpha over, Alyssa. You can't unring a bell. You can't booty aback the accusations you've fabricated or the damage you've done. And you apperceive what the worst part is. You all sat there and coordinated this attack. This wasn't spontaneous questioning. You planned this. The panelists exchanged guilty glances, acknowledging what Depp had suspected from the moment he'd walked onto the set. You brought me actuality under false pretenses, he continued, his voice now accustomed to the abounding weight of his acrimony and disappointment. You told my bodies this was about the film, about my work, and instead you angry it into a accessible lynching. You sat there like vultures, cat and mouse for your moment to pick afar what's larboard of my reputation. Joy Behar, never one to admit defeat, fabricated one final advance to justify their approach. Johnny, public figures accept to be captivated accountable. That's aloof allotment of actuality famous. Held accountable for what? Joy. Depp exploded. His accord finally shattering completely. For actuality human. For authoritative mistakes. For dupe the wrong people. For accepting my clandestine life turned into accessible entertainment. I've been captivated accountable. I went through hell and back. Absent roles, absent friends, lost years of my activity arresting myself against lies. What added accountability do you appetite from me? The flat was so quiet that you could apprehend the hum of the air conditioning system. Alike the production aggregation had chock-full moving, frozen by the raw effect cloudburst out of one of Hollywood's best acclaimed actors. I appetite you to accept something, Depp continued, his articulation now steady, but filled with a algid acerbity that was somehow more abashing than his earlier outburst. I've formed in this industry for over 30 years. I've created characters that accouchement love, that bring families together, that mean something to people. I've employed thousands of people, accurate countless charities, acclimated whatever belvedere I have to try to accomplish the apple a little bit better. He paused, attractive anniversary of the panelists in the eye for continuing. But none of that affairs to you, does it? None of my work, none of my contributions, none of the acceptable I've tried to do agency annihilation because you've abstively that I'm accusable of something. You've abstively that I deserve to be broken bottomward and your application your platform to do it. Whoopi fabricated one last attempt to advance some affinity of professional dignity. Johnny, I think you're overreacting. We asked tough questions of all our guests. Overreacting? Depp's articulation alone to barely aloft a whisper, but somehow it carried added annoyance than any of his earlier shouting. Whoopi. Let me tell you what overreacting would be. Overreacting would be me sitting here and systematically antibacterial anniversary of your careers the way you've approved to destroy abundance today. Overreacting would be me application my belvedere to advance lies about your claimed lives, your relationships, your mistakes. The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. And suddenly the ability activating in the room shifted completely. The panelists who had seemed so assured in their moral superiority moments afore now attending like children who had a live article they couldn't control. But I'm not activity to do that, Depp continued. Because unlike you, I absolutely accept principles. I don't destroy bodies for entertainment. I don't about-face animal adversity into ratings. I don't pretend that character assassination is journalism. He reached down and accessible his microphone completely. The baby acts somehow more final than any affecting action could have been. I came actuality to allocution about art, about creativity, about the thing that's been the active force of my entire developed life. Instead, I've been subjected to a accommodating advance by people who wouldn't apperceive absolute journalism if it bit them on their collective. He caught himself canonizing that this was still daytime television, still being broadcast to millions of homes across America. The abstemiousness somehow fabricated his anger added powerful, not less. The unfinished book afraid in the air like a brand cat and mouse to fall. Every being in that flat knew absolutely what Johnny Depp had been about to say, and somehow his abstemiousness fabricated the moment alike more powerful than if he had completed the thought. You apperceive what, he said, his voice now eerily calm. I'm done here. I'm done with this charade. I'm done with your affected affair for accountability, and I'm done pretending that what you do actuality has annihilation to do with accepted journalism. Whoopi perhaps analysis that she was losing complete ascendancy of the bearings made one atrocious advance to deliver her authority. Johnny, you can't aloof walk away from accepted questions. That's not how this works. Depp chockfull moving toward the avenue and boring angry back to face her. The attending in his eyes was something that none of the panelists had seen before. A admixture of disappointment, anger, and what could only be declared as pity. Legitimate questions? He afresh softly. Whoopi, let me ask you a accepted question. When you were activity through your own personal struggles, aback you were dealing with addiction, aback you were fighting to clean your career and your reputation, how would you accept acquainted if someone had ambushed you on television and approved to aperture you bottomward for entertainment? The catechism hit Whoopi like a concrete blow. Her own struggles with actuality corruption and the difficult periods of her career were well documented, and accepting them befuddled back at her in this ambience acutely caught her off guard. That's different, she stammered. But alike she didn't assume to believe her own words. How is it different? Deb pressed, demography a step back against the table. Because you're the host now instead of the guest. Because you're the one allurement the questions instead of answering them. Or is it altered because you've decided that your struggles were legitimate while abundance are somehow appearance flaws? Sarah Haynes approved to arise to Whoopi's defense, but her articulation lacked any real conviction. Johnny, I anticipate what Whoopi is aggravating to say is that aback you're promoting a project, bodies naturally want to apperceive about your journey, about how you've grown. My journey? Deb's voice rose again. The accurate control he'd been advancement alpha to slip once more. Sarah, you appetite to apperceive about my journey? I've been abstaining for over 2 years. I've rebuilt relationships that I thought were absent forever. I begin peace with genitalia of my activity that I thought would abode me until the day I died. I've abstrused to assurance again, to create again, to acquisition joy in the assignment that once brought me annihilation but pain. The raw honesty in his articulation was startling. This wasn't the able media acknowledgement that celebrities usually gave aback discussing personal struggles. This was real, unfiltered affect from Addition who had clearly been through hell and begin his way back. But none of that affairs to you, he continued, his eyes effective from one panelist to another. None of my actual growth. None of my absolute journey means annihilation because it doesn't fit the anecdotal you appetite to tell. You want me to be the collapsed star? The cautionary tale. The alternation bones that makes your audience feel bigger about their own lives. Joy Behar, who had been uncharacteristically quiet for the last few minutes, assuredly begin her voice again. Johnny, that's not fair. We're not aggravating to aperture you down. We're trying to accept an honest conversation about accountability in Hollywood. Depp laughed, but there was no amusement in it whatsoever. Accountability in Hollywood? Joy, that's rich. Advancing from an industry that adequate Harvey Weinstein for decades, that angry a dark eye to countless abuses of power, that systematically silenced victims for the sake of profits. You appetite to allocution about accountability? Let's allocution about the executives who knew what was happening and did nothing. Let's allocution about the agents who enabled predators. Let's talk about the media outlets that buried stories to assure their access. The panelists confused uncomfortably in their chairs. Depp had aloof angry the tables completely, banishment them to accost the broader ambience of Hollywood's accountability botheration rather than focusing alone on his claimed issues. But that's not the chat you want to have, is it? He continued relentlessly, because that would require absolute journalism. That would require courage. It's abundant easier to go after Addition who's already been through the acknowledged system, Addition who's already been about humiliated, Addition who can't action a back afterwards attractive like the bad guy. Sunny host fabricated one last attempt to absolve their approach. Johnny, I anticipate you're mischaracterizing what we're aggravating to do here. We're simply allurement questions that our viewers want answered. Your viewers, Depp repeated, afraid his arch in disgust. Do you absolutely anticipate your admirers' appetite to see Addition ambushed and ashamed on national television? Do you anticipate they tune in to watch you abort bodies who come actuality in acceptable faith, or do you just tell yourself that to absolve what you do? He paused, attractive anon into the camera for the aboriginal time aback the interview began. I appetite to say something directly to the bodies watching at home. I came actuality today to allocution about a film that I'm appreciative of. A baby-independent project that tells a adventure I accept in. Instead, I've been subjected to a coordinated advance by bodies who assume to think that antibacterial someone's reputation is an anatomy of entertainment. The camera operators exchanged glances, unsure whether they should continue filming what was acutely an unprecedented aperture of daytime television protocol. I appetite you to ask yourselves, Depp continued, still looking anon into the camera. Is this the affectionate of journalism you want? Is this the affectionate of address that helps our association move forward? Is this the way you appetite accessible abstracts to be treated aback they're aggravating to share their assignment with the world? Whoopi finally began her articulation again, but it was bright that she had absent all control of the situation. Johnny, I anticipate you're being arbitrary to us and to our audience. We're professionals aggravating to do our job. Depp angry abroad from the camera and fixed her with a beam that could have melted steel. Professionals. Whoopi. Let me acquaint you what professionals do. Professionals adapt for interviews by researching their guests' current projects. Professionals ask questions that are accordant to the acumen someone agreed to arise on their show. Professionals amusement their guests with basic animal dignity, alike aback they're asking difficult questions. He began walking against the avenue again, but his voice agitated acutely throughout the studio. What you did actuality today wasn't professional. It was an ambuscade disguised as an interview, appearance assassination disguised as journalism, and entertainment bearded as accountability. Alyssa Fenhold fabricated one final atrocious advance to accumulate him from leaving. Johnny, amuse don't go. We can start over. We can allocution about your film. Depp chockfull at the bend of the set and turned aback one aftermost time. Alpha over. Alyssa, you can't alpha over afterwards what happened actuality today. You can't booty back the accusations. You can't disengage the damage. And you absolutely can't pretend that this was any time about my film. He looked at anniversary of the pain lists one final time. His expression, a admixture of disappointment and article that might have been sadness. I achievement anytime you understand the aberration between holding edition answerable and publicly destroying them for entertainment. I hope you apprehend that there are real human beings abaft the celebrity personas you assume to adore tearing apart. The flat fell absolutely silent as Depp absolved against the exit, his footsteps alveolate in the cavernous space. Aloof afore he able the door, he angry aback one final time. And Whoopi, he said, his articulation carrying clearly beyond the studio. The next time you appetite to catechism someone's character, you ability appetite to booty a long look in the mirror first, because what I saw actuality today tells me a lot added about who you are than it does about who I am. With that, Johnny Depp absolved off the appearance set, abrogation abaft 5 panelists who sat in abashed silence, an audience that had aloof witnessed television history, and an aggregation that had no abstraction how to handle what had just unfolded afore their cameras. The silence connected on for about 30 seconds afore Whoopi assuredly managed to speak. Her articulation almost aloft a whisper. Will be appropriate aback afterwards this commercial break. But anybody in that studio knew that there was no coming back from what had aloof happened. They had pushed one of Hollywood's most respected actors too far. And he had responded with a akin of bluntness and raw effect that had completely destroyed their anxiously constructed narrative. As the cameras finally stopped rolling and the flat lights dimmed, one affair was bright clear. This was a moment that would be talked about, analyzed, and remembered for years to come. Johnny Depp had absolved off the View. But in accomplishing so, he had delivered one of the best powerful indictments of avant-garde celebrity journalism that daytime television had ever seen. What did you anticipate of this unprecedented confrontation? Do you believe the appearance beyond the band with their analytic, or do you anticipate public figures should apprehend this akin of scrutiny? Bead your thoughts in the comments beneath and accomplish abiding to subscribe for added belief that go behind the account of Hollywood's most dramatic moments.
Thank you for watching my video.